The Enforcement Directorate has triggered yet another controversy by sending a notice to former Finance Minister of Kerala, Dr. T.M. Thomas Isaac. They want to question him regarding the funding of the Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board, or the KIIFB, during the previous government. The KIIFB Act was passed in 1999. In 2016, the first Pinarayi Vijayan government amended it to widen its scope. Dr. Isaac relied heavily on KIIFB to build roads, bridges, government offices and schools. The fund was also used for acquiring lands for prestigious projects of the government, such as widening the NH, Silver Line project and industrial corridors. As a result, the change in terms of road infrastructure and buildings is very much visible in the state. How does KIIFB make all this money? They borrow it. And why can't the government borrow money directly instead of KIIFB? Let us take a look at it. As per the norms set by the Union Government and the RBI, states cannot borrow beyond a certain limit, which is 3.5% of their GDP. For Kerala, this amount will only be sufficient to run its day-to-day business. Though the state has succeeded in ensuring social security, better school education and healthcare, it has to improve a lot in generating employment and strengthening the economy. We cannot wait for the economy to improve to build good roads or other public utilities. So, we have to borrow money. Spending more on infrastructure will gradually improve the GDP of the state, resulting in overall development. This is the theory of the state government. But, as we saw earlier, the state cannot borrow beyond the 3.5% limit. According to Dr. Isaac, the borrowing limit, which is set based on the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, is a neoliberal concept and discriminatory. The LDF does not agree with such a curb on state finance, and it sees KIIFB as the tool to overcome this hurdle. KIIFB is a body corporate, established by an act passed by the State Assembly. Such body corporates are not equivalent to the government or a local body. Hence, the KIIFB can borrow beyond the limit set by the Union Government. Dr. Isaac has been arguing for quite some time that the government should increase its expenditure. The state has used maximum of the relaxation to the borrowing limit during COVID lockdown period to help its people. He alleges that the Union Government and several other state governments did not spend that money to maintain fiscal responsibility. According to him, this is not how the government should function. KIIFB issued masala bonds in 2018 at the London and Singapore stock exchanges. Masala bonds are the bonds issued outside India but in Indian rupees. The ED, which probes money laundering and violation of foreign exchange laws, feels that KIIFB cannot borrow from abroad. LDF says that the ban on availing foreign loans is applicable only to state government and not to KIIFB. Besides, RBI has given prior approval to KIIFB on June 2, 2018 to release the masala bond. The board files a monthly report to the central bank on how they spend the money. As per Section 6.3 of the Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999, RBI has the power to regulate any borrowing in foreign exchange. RBI has not flagged any issues so far, says Isaac. According to a source in the government, the ED quoted the 7th schedule of the Constitution, which says foreign loans are under the purview of the Union Government, to argue that the state cannot borrow money from abroad. However, this clause in the Constitution is about lawmaking. It means only the Union Government can make laws related to foreign loans. Not that only the Union Government can take a loan from a foreign country, he argued. The National Highway Authority of India is a body corporate created by the Parliament. It has also issued masala bonds similarly. So are NTPC and IREDA. Can state governments also form such body corporates? Yes. Companies Act allows state and union governments to establish body corporates. How did the controversy start? The Controller and Auditor General, in its audit report for the financial year 2019-20, argued that the KIIFB loans have to be included in the state's kitty as the board does not have any income on its own. The repayment of the KIIFB loan is from the motor vehicle tax and cess on petroleum products. A portion of these taxes is earmarked for KIIFB, and the repayment period is as long as 30 years. In 2020, this comment in the CAG report was rejected by the State Assembly. Once the Assembly rejects a comment from CAG, it will not become part of the final report. However, CAG reiterated the argument in stronger words in the audit report of the following year. Later, the union government said the borrowings of the KIIFB and the Kerala Social Security Pension Limited, which is a special purpose vehicle, will be considered as liabilities of the state. This will affect the state's borrowing limits for the upcoming years. The Finance Minister K.N. Balagopal told the Assembly that the comments of CAG in the report were aimed at tarnishing the image of the KIIFB and hence reducing the fund collection rapidly. The funds of KIIFB are audited regularly at multiple levels. The institution gets funding because of its credibility in handling money, argues Isaac. After the first CAG report, the Enforcement Directorate called up KIIFB officials several times to probe the issuance of the Masala bond. Though the officials submitted the documents, there was no clarity on what the probe was about, says Balagopal. The government also accused the Income Tax Department of needlessly harassing the KIIFB officials while the tax for the project it takes up was paid by the SPV and not the KIIFB directly. However, the department did not listen to reason, alleges the minister. The LDF alleged that the moves of the central agencies were politically motivated as the investigation started ahead of the assembly polls in 2021. Isaac says that the borrowings of the KIIFB will never put the state in trouble. The state has the capacity to handle it. The growth rate of Kerala is above the national average since 1987. Besides, the interest of the borrowings of the state is not higher than the rate of economic growth, which implies that there is no need to worry about debt, argues Isaac. However, K.T. Ram Mohan, a stringent critic of state finances, warns that if the earmarked sources of loan repayment of KIIFB fail to generate sufficient revenue, a search for other sources would be inevitable. This could lead to tax hikes or new taxes. The fiscal status of Kerala casts doubt on its capacity for further increase in debt, he says. While the government says KIIFB is a model to overcome the neoliberal financial restrictions, Ram Mohan feels the KIIFB itself is neoliberal. It opens a window to neoliberalization at the sub-sovereign level in India, he says. He also alleges that such off-budget borrowing goes against the fundamental principle of public finance, which emphasizes accountability to people through the legislature. Isaac replies that KIIFB borrowings are not off-budget as the expenditure is not shown in the budget. He also argues that the KIIFB projects are discussed in the assembly. Further, Ram Mohan questions how para-governmental institutions can undertake massive public expenditure and whether a generous investment in infrastructure would necessarily mean economic growth. The debate on KIIFB and state finances is expected to take the center stage in Kerala in the coming days.